Nanny lasted week with the millionaire CEO's twins, until SHE showed up and did what won ever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The mansion was vast, its walls lined with centuries-old art, its corridors echoing the footsteps of the rich and powerful who came and went without a second thought. But today, there was a stillness in the air. The sprawling estate seemed almost too quiet. The grand staircase that led up to the second floor had seen countless feet over the years, but it was not the footsteps of luxury that echoed now. It was the hurried, uncertain steps of someone who wasn't meant to be there, someone who was far from this world of affluence and grandeur. Her name was Rachel. She had just been hired as the nanny for the CEO's twin children. It was supposed to be a temporary role, just until the regular nanny returned from her unexpected leave, but Rachel had no idea that this job would push her into a world of secrets, lies, and, unexpectedly, her own future. She had always been good with children, spending most of her adult life working as a caretaker in small homes, never imagining that one day she'd be employed in a mansion like this. But here she was, at the entrance of the grand living room, watching as the twins, Oliver and Olivia, played quietly in front of the fireplace. They were beautiful, well-behaved children, but their eyes carried the heaviness of a life most children couldn't even imagine. They were the children of Adam Blackwell, one of the wealthiest and most powerful CEOs in the country. He had built an empire, and yet, he couldn't seem to find time for his own children. Rachel's first few days had been nerve-wracking. The mansion was intimidating, the staff quiet and distant, and the responsibilities felt far beyond what she had signed up for. But the twins were sweet, and as she spent more time with them, she began to feel like she could make a difference in their lives. That was until the accident. The twins had been playing near the grand staircase when Olivia tripped, tumbling down the stairs. Rachel had heard the scream and rushed to the scene, her heart pounding. She reached the bottom of the staircase just in time to catch Olivia in her arms before she hit the floor. The impact left Rachel breathless, but it was nothing compared to the shock in Adam Blackwell's eyes when he appeared in the doorway moments later, his normally composed demeanor shattered. Rachel had no idea that this one moment, this simple act of catching the child, would change everything. Adam's cold eyes studied her for a long moment, as if evaluating her, and for a brief second, Rachel wondered if she had made the wrong decision in acting so quickly. But then, without a word, he motioned for her to follow him. As Rachel walked through the hallways, her nerves were on edge. She had saved his child, but would he see it that way? Would he be angry at her for handling the situation on her own? "Thank you for saving her," Adam said quietly as they entered his private office. His voice was low, controlled, but Rachel could hear the edge in it. "You've proven yourself to be more than just a nanny." Rachel felt a lump in her throat. She had no idea what was coming next. Adam's cold exterior had cracked just a little, but what would happen now? Was this the end of her brief career at the mansion, or was there something more waiting for her? As she stood in front of him, the tension in the room was palpable. Rachel had no idea that this small act of kindness would lead her into a path of unexpected revelations and connections. And as Adam looked at her, something in his eyes told her that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would change her forever. As Rachel stood there, still in shock from Adam's unexpected gratitude, she wondered what this would mean for her future. She had spent her entire life taking care of others, but never before had she been in such a high-stakes situation. She looked at Adam, his expression still unreadable, and felt the weight of his gaze. He was a man of power, a man used to being in control, and yet there was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that made her wonder if, maybe, just maybe, he didn't have all the answers either. "You're not just a nanny," Adam said again, his voice softer this time. "You've shown you can handle more than I ever expected. I'll be giving you more responsibilities around here, starting with a project I've been working on for a while." Rachel was taken aback. More responsibility? What could he possibly want from her? She had never been anything more than a caretaker, just someone to watch over his children while he handled the business side of things. She opened her mouth to speak, but found herself at a loss for words. Adam noticed the hesitation. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now," he continued. "But I need someone I can trust. Someone who can keep my children safe and help me with the legacy I'm building." Rachel nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. She had always done what was asked of her, but this felt different. She was about to enter a world that had once seemed so far out of her reach. The day moved on slowly. Adam had given her a tour of the estate, showing her the vast gardens, the grand office where he spent most of his days, and, most importantly, the areas where the twins liked to play. Every time they passed a new area, Rachel couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. The mansion was beautiful, sure, but it felt so foreign to her, a stark contrast to the modest home she had come from. She had never imagined a life like this. The evening came quickly, and after dinner with the twins, Rachel found herself alone in her small room, trying to process the whirlwind of events. She couldn't stop thinking about Adam's offer. More responsibility? It seemed too much to handle, too much for someone like her. But she couldn't deny that the idea of making a difference in this family, of finally being recognized for her worth, was tempting. The next morning, as she was cleaning up the breakfast table, she heard a knock on the door. It was Adam. "I've got a new task for you," he said, standing in the doorway. "I want you to accompany me to an event tonight, a gala I'm hosting for the company. You'll be there as my +1. A gala? Rachel was stunned. She had never been to such an event, never imagined she would be invited to one. She had never even owned a formal dress. She glanced at her simple attire, then back at Adam, unsure of how to respond. "I know it's last minute," Adam said, noticing her hesitation. "But it's important, Rachel. This could be a turning point for both of us." There was no turning back now. Rachel had already stepped into this world, and now, it seemed, there was no escaping it. The night of the gala arrived, and Rachel stood in front of her mirror, wearing a dress that Adam had tailored for her. She barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror was confident, poised, a stark contrast to the nervous girl she had been just a few days ago. She stepped into the car that would take them to the event, her heart racing with anticipation and fear. As they entered the grand ballroom, Rachel felt like she was in a dream. The lights, the music, the people dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos, it was all so overwhelming. But when Adam introduced her to the guests as his companion for the evening, she could see the shift in their attitudes. They no longer saw her as the nanny, the poor girl who had been hired on a whim. No, she was someone important now, someone who belonged in this world. Adam's presence, his power, his wealth, had somehow transferred onto her. But just as she was beginning to feel a sense of belonging, Rachel noticed something strange. Adam seemed distant. His attention was on someone else across the room, someone who seemed to have a special place in his life. Rachel felt a pang of unease. Was there something between Adam and this person? Had she been brought to this event for a reason other than just being his companion? As the evening wore on, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on than Adam was letting on. She had been part of his world for only a short time, but she was beginning to realize just how much was hidden beneath the surface. She couldn't help but wonder what she had truly gotten herself into. As the night of the gala wore on, Rachel couldn't shake the unease she felt. Adam had introduced her to several influential people in his circle, and each handshake, each polite smile from the high society crowd, made her feel more and more out of place. She wasn't from this world. She was just a woman from a humble background who had somehow ended up at the center of a billionaire's world. Adam, however, seemed at ease, his usual composure never faltering. He was in his element, charming the guests with ease, and she could tell that people respected him, admired him. Yet, despite his smile, there was something distant about his demeanor that Rachel couldn't quite figure out. It wasn't until later in the evening that she realized what it was. As she stood by the bar, nursing a glass of water, she noticed Adam's gaze constantly drifting toward a woman across the room. The woman was elegant, confident, and clearly familiar to him. She was laughing, talking animatedly with a group of people, but every time Adam's eyes met hers, there was something in his expression, something warm, something intimate. Rachel's stomach tightened. She tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in her gut, but it was impossible. This wasn't just a random woman. This was someone important to Adam. The realization stung, but it also fueled a fire of curiosity inside her. Who was she? Why did Adam seem so drawn to her? Was she his wife? A lover? Or maybe just someone from his past? Rachel tried to push the thought aside, but it lingered, clouding her thoughts. Adam had been nothing but kind to her since she arrived at the mansion. But was there more to his actions than just gratitude for saving his child? As she pondered this, Adam approached her, his confident smile returning. "Rachel, you're doing great tonight," he said, his voice warm, though there was still an air of formality between them. "Thank you," she replied, offering him a strained smile. She tried to act casual, but her mind was racing. "You're handling all of this better than I expected," Adam continued, as though he hadn't noticed the tension in her response. "I've had people like you in my life before, Rachel. People I can trust. People who keep things running smoothly." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. Did that mean he was considering her for something more than just a nanny? Did he see her as someone who could help him with his empire? Or was she just another person to be used and discarded when the time came? The evening ended with a grand toast to the success of Adam's latest business ventures. Rachel found herself standing beside him, her heart racing, as she clinked her glass with his. He looked at her, his expression softening just a little, and for a moment, it seemed like he was seeing her as more than just the nanny. "You've done well tonight," he said, his voice low. "You've earned my trust." But even as he spoke, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that the trust he was offering her wasn't as genuine as she hoped. There was something else beneath the surface, something hidden in the depths of his guarded eyes. She was starting to realize that she wasn't just in a relationship with Adam Blackwell, the CEO. She was in the midst of a complicated web of secrets and desires, and she wasn't sure if she was prepared to face what would come next. As the night wound down and the guests began to leave, Adam excused himself to handle the final details of the event, leaving Rachel to reflect on everything that had just happened. Her mind was in turmoil. She had been thrust into this new world, surrounded by wealth and power, and yet, she was still unsure of her place in it. Was she here to stay, to make a difference in the lives of the children she had come to care for? Or was she just another pawn in Adam's game? The next few days at the mansion would be crucial. Rachel could feel the shift in the air, the tension between them that no one else seemed to notice. She had earned Adam's trust, but what was she truly trusting him with? As the days passed, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The mansion felt more like a gilded cage with every passing moment, and though she was surrounded by luxury, she still felt like an outsider. The twins, Oliver and Olivia, were growing attached to her, and she loved them dearly, but her growing connection with Adam felt complicated. Every time she saw him, it was hard to ignore the way he looked at her, not just as his employee, but as someone more. The glances he gave her now lingered, his smile softened in a way that made her heart race. But there was still that mystery, the other woman, the one Adam kept glancing at during the gala. Rachel couldn't forget the way their eyes locked across the room, how Adam's face had softened when he saw her. It was clear to Rachel that there was something between them, something that Adam wasn't sharing. She had to know more. She needed to understand where she stood in all of this. But instead of confronting him directly, she decided to focus on her responsibilities. She spent her days with the twins, keeping them safe and happy, trying to ignore the tension building inside her. One afternoon, while Adam was at a meeting, Rachel found herself wandering the grounds of the estate, trying to clear her mind. She wandered into the garden, where she often came to find peace. As she walked along the winding path, she noticed something unexpected, a small, locked door at the far end of the garden, hidden behind a thick wall of ivy. Curiosity piqued, Rachel walked closer, brushing the leaves aside. The door was old, its wood weathered and cracked, and a small keyhole gleamed in the sunlight. For a moment, she considered leaving it alone, but something urged her to investigate. She turned around, making sure no one was watching, then gently pushed the door open. Inside, she found a small room, filled with shelves stacked with boxes and old furniture. It looked like a storage area, but there was something about the room that felt different. Rachel stepped inside, her footsteps barely making a sound on the hardwood floor. As she looked around, she noticed a file on one of the tables. It was an old file, yellowed with age, and it was marked with Adam's name. Her heart skipped a beat. What was this? Why would Adam have something so personal hidden away in a storage room? She picked up the file, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside, she found papers, documents, and pictures of Adam with a woman, the same woman from the gala. There were letters, too, written in a hand that was unfamiliar to Rachel. As she skimmed through the documents, she discovered something that made her breath catch in her throat. The letters were from someone named Rebecca, and they spoke of a deep, complicated relationship. The words in the letters were full of longing, regret, and unfinished business. It was clear that Adam had been deeply involved with Rebecca, but the letters also hinted at a painful separation. Rachel's mind raced as she tried to process what she was reading. Adam hadn't told her about Rebecca. Had he been keeping secrets from her all along? Was she just a distraction, a convenient solution to his lonely, complicated life? Just as Rachel was about to read more, she heard footsteps approaching the garden. Panicked, she quickly shoved the file back onto the table and ran to the door, closing it quietly behind her. She felt sick to her stomach. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Adam's life was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. And now, she was caught in the middle of something she didn't fully understand. She had wanted to be a part of his world, to help him, but the more she uncovered, the more she realized that this world was full of lies and hidden truths. Adam had his secrets, and she was beginning to wonder if she was just another part of his carefully curated life, a life that was built on appearances, not honesty. The next morning, Rachel woke up with a sense of dread. She had to confront Adam. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it was so clearly not. She had to know the truth, even if it meant losing everything she had worked so hard to build. But as she stood in front of the mirror, preparing for another day at the mansion, she realized that this was no longer just about the job. It was about her future, her place in Adam's world, and whether she was willing to accept the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Adam had shown her kindness, but kindness alone wouldn't be enough to navigate the tangled web of secrets that surrounded them both. The tension in the air was palpable as Rachel stood in front of Adam, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to know the truth. No more secrets, no more hiding behind polite conversations and fleeting glances. The weight of everything she had uncovered, the feelings she had for him, and the growing uncertainty about her place in his life were all crashing down on her. She had to ask him about Rebecca, the woman in the letters. She had to understand where she stood in this tangled web of lies and half-truths. Adam, Rachel started, her voice trembling just a little, "We need to talk." Adam, who had been sitting at his desk, looked up from his work, his expression unreadable. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice neutral, though there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that made Rachel's stomach tighten. "I found something," Rachel continued, taking a deep breath. "Something you've been hiding from me." Adam's face didn't change, but his posture shifted slightly, as though he was preparing for the conversation he knew was coming. He set his pen down slowly and looked at her, waiting for her to continue. "I found the letters. From Rebecca." The words hung in the air between them, thick with the weight of everything unspoken. Adam's gaze faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "Rachel," he began, his voice softer now, "I didn't want you to find out this way. I never meant for you to get involved in any of this." "Involved in what?" Rachel asked, her voice rising slightly, the frustration and confusion bubbling to the surface. "What is it, Adam? Why didn't you tell me about her?" Adam stood up from his desk and walked over to the window, staring out at the sprawling estate. The silence between them stretched out, heavy and thick. "Rebecca was someone from my past," he said finally, his voice low. "A long time ago, before I became who I am today. We had a complicated relationship. It ended badly, and I didn't want to drag you into it." Rachel felt her heart sink. "So that's it. You're just going to keep me in the dark? You don't think I deserve to know the truth?" "It's not that simple," Adam replied, turning to face her, his expression pained. "I never wanted to involve you in my past. I wanted you to focus on the here and now. I wanted you to focus on the children, on the work we're doing together. But I see now that I've been hiding too much, and I'm sorry." Rachel's anger flared for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something deeper, something more vulnerable. "I'm not just here for the children, Adam," she said quietly. "I'm here because I care about you. But you're shutting me out, and I don't know if I can keep doing this if you don't let me in." Adam's expression softened, and for a moment, Rachel thought he might say something, anything that would explain everything. But instead, he just walked back to his desk and sat down, running a hand through his hair. I've made a mess of things, he muttered. I've been so focused on my business, on everything that comes with it, that I've neglected the people who matter most. Rachel could feel her frustration growing, but she didn't let it show. She walked over to him and stood in front of his desk. So what now? She asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. What are you going to do about it? Adam looked up at her, and for the first time since they had met, there was a flicker of something real in his eyes, something raw and honest. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm willing to figure it out. Starting with you. Rachel felt a flicker of hope in her chest. She had always known that Adam was complicated, that there was more to him than the cold, distant so he portrayed. But now, for the first time, it seemed like he was finally opening up to her. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I don't expect everything to be perfect, Rachel said softly, but I can't keep being in the dark. I need to know where I stand with you. I need to know if we're in this together, or if I'm just another part of your empire. Adam looked at her, his gaze intense. You're not just another part of my empire, Rachel, he said firmly. You matter to me, more than I've been able to admit. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. For the first time, she felt like she could breathe again. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of the confusion and the secrets. Maybe, just maybe, they could figure it out together. The days that followed were a blur of emotion and new beginnings. Rachel could feel the shift in the air. Adam had been open with her in a way he had never been before, and for the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, she felt like they were moving towards something real. It was a slow process, but the walls he had built around himself were beginning to crumble. Still, Rachel couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to uncover. Despite Adam's admission, she was still unsure if she could truly trust him. The questions about his past and his intentions lingered, and Rachel wasn't sure if she was ready to let herself fall for someone who had so many secrets. One morning, after another late night of work, Rachel found herself sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the estate. The tranquility of the moment was almost surreal. The world around her seemed peaceful, but inside, she was torn. Just then, Adam appeared, stepping out of the door behind her. His presence, once intimidating, now felt comforting. He sat down next to her without saying a word, the two of them simply taking in the beauty of the morning. For a while, neither of them spoke. It was a rare moment of peace amidst the chaos of their lives. Finally, Adam broke the silence. I know I've made mistakes, he said softly, his voice tinged with vulnerability. But I want to make it right. I want you to be a part of this, Rachel. Not just in the role you've been given, but in everything. Rachel looked at him, searching his eyes for any trace of dishonesty. She saw nothing but sincerity. He was finally opening up, fully. I'm here, Adam, she replied, her voice steady. But I need more than just words. I need to see the real you, the one behind the CEO and the business deals. Adam nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I've been afraid, he admitted. Afraid of letting anyone in. Afraid of being vulnerable. But I can't keep living like that. Rachel's heart softened. She had always known there was more to Adam than the man he showed the world. His cold, businesslike exterior was just a mask, a shield to protect him from the pain of his past. We'll figure it out, Rachel said, her voice firm but kind. One step at a time. The conversation felt like a turning point. For the first time, Rachel believed that they were in this together, not just for the twins, but for themselves. She knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead. But as they sat together, watching the sun rise over the mansion, Rachel felt a sense of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. She had trusted him with her heart, and now, he was beginning to trust her with his. It was a delicate balance, but for the first time, Rachel felt like they were both ready to make it work. Over the next few weeks, things began to change. Rachel found herself becoming more involved with Adam's business ventures, something she never expected. She had been hired to care for the children, but now, Adam was asking for her input on decisions, trusting her judgment in ways he hadn't before. It was a subtle shift, but it was enough to show her that he was taking her seriously. The twins, too, were growing more attached to her. Rachel had always been good with children, but this bond felt different. It wasn't just about caring for them anymore. It was about being a part of their family, in a way that she never thought possible. One evening, as the family sat down for dinner, Adam looked at her across the table. His gaze was warm, his expression softer than she had ever seen it. "I'm glad you're here, Rachel," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "You've made more of a difference than you know." Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with pride. She had come into this mansion as just another nanny, but now, she was so much more. And as Adam's words settled in, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the family she had always been searching for. As the days went by, Rachel started to believe that perhaps she had found something real with Adam. The weight of his secrets, once so overwhelming, had begun to feel less like a burden and more like a shared experience. She had seen glimpses of the man beneath the CEO persona, and now, it seemed as though he was trying to let her in. But despite this progress, a nagging feeling still lingered in the back of Rachel's mind. She had learned to trust Adam, but trust was a fragile thing, especially when so many pieces of his past remained hidden. One morning, as Rachel was preparing breakfast for the twins, she overheard a conversation between Adam and his business partner. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the words that reached her ears were impossible to ignore. "I can't keep this up, Adam," the partner said, his voice strained. "You need to make a decision about your personal life. You can't keep pretending everything's fine while you're dealing with all of this." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. All of this? What was that supposed to mean? She had heard whispers of Adam's past, but the more she overheard, the more questions arose. What was Adam hiding? And why had he never been fully open with her about it? The twins walked into the kitchen just then, interrupting her thoughts. They were still half asleep, their hair messy from bed, but they smiled when they saw her. "Morning, Rachel," Oliver called, his voice cheerful. "What's for breakfast today?" Rachel forced a smile, pushing aside the unease that had settled in her stomach. "Pancakes, your favorite," she said, trying to focus on the moment. But as she cooked, her mind kept drifting back to the conversation she had overheard. After breakfast, Adam came downstairs, looking more preoccupied than usual. He greeted the twins with his usual warmth, but Rachel could see the tension in his shoulders. She had never seen him like this before, usually so composed, so in control. Today he seemed different. "Is everything okay?" Rachel asked quietly, once the children had gone to play. Adam didn't meet her eyes at first, and for a moment, Rachel thought he might brush her off. But then he sighed and sat down beside her at the kitchen table. "I'm sorry I haven't been completely upfront with you, Rachel," he began, his voice tired. "There's a lot going on, and I've been trying to protect you from it." Rachel's pulse quickened. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment he would finally open up to her. "What's going on, Adam?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the anxiety gnawing at her insides. Adam rubbed his temples, then looked at her, his gaze finally meeting hers. "There are people, business partners, associates I've worked with in the past, who want something from me. Something I can't give them. And I've been trying to figure out how to handle it without bringing you into it." Rachel's heart raced as she listened. This wasn't just about his past relationship. With Rebecca, it was something much bigger. "What do they want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam hesitated. "They want control. Control over the company, over everything I've worked for. They think I'm vulnerable, and they're trying to take advantage of it." Rachel's mind spun. She had known Adam's life was complicated, but she hadn't realized just how deeply entwined he was with powerful, dangerous people. "And what does this have to do with me?" she asked. "Why haven't you told me about this before?" Adam leaned back in his chair, his eyes dark with frustration. "I didn't want to drag you into this world, Rachel. I didn't want you to be a pawn in this game. I was trying to keep you safe." Rachel felt a pang in her chest. She had come into this world as an outsider, but now she realized that she wasn't just an observer. She was a part of this, whether she liked it or not. "I'm not afraid of the truth, Adam," she said quietly, her voice unwavering. "I'm here because I care about you. If we're going to face this together, we need to face everything. All of it." Adam looked at her, a mixture of gratitude and guilt in his eyes. "I know," he said softly. "I just didn't want to lose you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Rachel reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "You won't lose me," she said, her voice firm. "But we have to do this together." Adam nodded, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he seemed truly relieved. They were on the same page now, ready to face whatever came next. But Rachel knew this was only the beginning. Adam's world was far from simple, and there were more challenges ahead. The stakes had just gotten much higher, and she wasn't sure what would happen next. But one thing was clear. No matter what, she wasn't walking away. She was in this with Adam, for better or worse. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, but Rachel felt something shifting inside her. Adam had opened up to her in a way that she hadn't expected, and though the path ahead was still unclear, it felt like they were finally standing on the same ground. They had shared their fears, their secrets, and now they were going to face what was coming together. But as the days passed, the weight of their situation became harder to ignore. Adam's business dealings had always been complicated, but now it felt like they were teetering on the edge of something dangerous. One evening, as Rachel and Adam sat in the kitchen, the conversation turned serious once again. The stress of the situation was beginning to show on Adam's face. His usually confident demeanor was now clouded with worry. "I've been getting more pressure from the board," Adam said, his voice heavy. "They're not happy with how things are going. If I don't handle this right, it could cost me everything I've worked for." Rachel watched him closely, her heart aching for him. She knew the weight he carried, his empire, his legacy, the people depending on him. But now, it felt like he was fighting not just for his business, but for his very future. "What can we do?" Rachel asked quietly. "You're not alone in this, Adam. We'll figure it out together." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "I know. I don't know how much longer I can keep everything under control." Rachel reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm here, and we'll find a way." The words were simple, but they felt powerful. Adam seemed to relax just a little, his shoulders easing as he took a deep breath. "I can't keep running from my past," he said, his voice softer. "I've made mistakes, and I need to fix them. Not just for me, but for you, and for the twins." Rachel nodded. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but for the first time, Adam was letting her in fully. She wasn't just a caretaker or an employee anymore. She was a partner in this fight. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and planning. Adam worked tirelessly, trying to navigate the storm that was brewing around him. Rachel was right by his side, helping with the twins, managing the estate, and offering support when he needed it most. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and it felt like they were building something stronger with every passing day. But the pressure kept mounting. Adam's business was on the line, and the stakes were higher than ever. Late one night, after the twins had gone to bed, Adam sat in his office, staring at the mountain of paperwork in front of him. Rachel walked in, her presence a calm contrast to the chaos that surrounded him. "You need to rest," she said softly, standing by the door. "I can't," Adam replied, running a hand through his hair. "If I stop now, everything could fall apart." Rachel walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've been fighting for so long, but you can't do it all on your own." Adam looked up at her, his eyes tired but filled with something else. Hope, maybe, or trust. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Rachel," he admitted quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the weight of the world had been placed in their hands, but together, they could bear it. "We'll get through this," Rachel said firmly, her voice unwavering. "One step at a time." Adam's lips curled into a small smile, his first in days. "One step at a time," he echoed. As Rachel stood there with him, she realized just how far they had come. They had faced so much already, secrets, fears, and doubts, but now, it felt like they were stronger because they had each other. There was still a long road ahead, and the future remained uncertain. But for the first time, Rachel wasn't afraid. She wasn't alone, and neither was Adam. Together, they would face whatever came next, hand in hand, ready to fight for the life they were building. And though the storm was far from over, they were no longer fighting it alone. The days after their conversation felt different, somehow lighter. Adam had opened up, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel felt like they were truly on the same page. They had spent so much time hiding behind masks. He, the powerful CEO, and she, just the nanny. But now, those walls were crumbling, and in their place was something stronger: trust, understanding, and a bond that neither of them could ignore. Together, they had faced the pressure, the business challenges, and the complications that came with Adam's world. The road wasn't easy, but they had navigated it, side by side. And even though there were still hurdles to overcome, Rachel felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. As the weeks passed, Adam's business began to stabilize. The pressure from his partners eased, and he started to regain control of the company he had built. But what mattered most to him now was not just the business. It was his family and the future they were going to build together. One afternoon, Adam invited Rachel to a private dinner. The twins were with their grandmother for the night, giving them a rare moment alone. As they sat at the table, Adam looked at Rachel, his eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "I never imagined it would be like this," he said softly, his voice laced with emotion. "I've spent so many years building an empire, but I didn't realize what I was missing until you came into my life." Rachel smiled, her heart swelling with the words she had longed to hear. "I'm glad I'm here, Adam," she replied, her voice steady and full of conviction. "I'm here because I believe in you and in us." The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the kind of understanding that spoke louder than words. As the evening wore on, Adam stood and walked to the other side of the room. He returned with a small, velvet box, and Rachel's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what he was doing, but she had a feeling she was about to find out. Adam dropped to one knee, his eyes never leaving hers. "Rachel, you've been my anchor in a storm I never saw coming," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "You've shown me what it means to truly live, not just exist. I don't want to imagine my life without you in it." Rachel's breath caught in her throat as he opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, Rachel couldn't speak. Her emotions were overwhelming. Relief, joy, love, all of it crashing together in one beautiful moment. She had never expected this, never imagined that her life would take such a turn. But here she was, standing in front of a man she had grown to love, a man who had once been a stranger to her. "Yes," she finally whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, I will." Adam's face lit up with a smile that was more genuine than anything she had seen before. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and in that moment, it was clear that their journey had only just begun. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but together, they were ready to face it. As Adam stood and pulled Rachel into his arms, she realized that this was what she had been waiting for, someone to share her life with, someone who saw her for who she truly was. No longer just the nanny, no longer just the woman on the outside. She was part of his world now, and he was a part of hers. And as they held each other in that quiet, intimate moment, Rachel knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. It wasn't the perfect fairy tale ending, but it was real, and it was theirs.